Matt, welcome to Becoming Okay. How are you doing today?
Good, Meg. Thanks for having us. Just walked in from the cold, so I feel alive in that weird way when you've been out in the cold and you come into the warm.
Yeah, it's interesting because we're actually going to talk all about happiness today. And I wanted to speak to you first and foremost around how you had said to me that happiness is actually more about unhappiness. And I wanted you to break that down, like what you meant by that.
Yeah. So at the happiness index, people imagine that we're having meetings about making people happy all the time. But really, generally, what happens is most companies contact us where there's an issue or a problem and there's unhappiness in the workforce and it's causing an issue, a business issue like productivity or lower sales or all the staff are resigning. So the first conversation is normally around unhappiness. And we're normally looking at like what's really annoying people, why are they not turning up? Why can't they be themselves? Why are people resigning? So the conversation about happiness, we paradoxically often starts with talking about happiness and we end up talking about unhappiness more than we do happiness, weirdly. But maybe we need to fix that, Meg.
Should we strive for happiness or should we strive for joy?
So I think the thing to be aware of that everyone should be aware of on here is the hedonic treadmill. The hedonic treadmill is the thing where we chase the thing that we think is going to make us happy and we get there and we just feel really flat. Or in worse places, when someone buys something that they think is going to make them happy and then they feel actually the opposite, not even just flat, they feel unhappy. So I always use the ancient Greek definition of eudaimonia and hedonism. So hedonism is like the thing that goes up and down, the thing that we would probably call joy. But eudaimonia is just that underlying state of how we feel about our lives. And that's the thing that I think people should be looking to work on. That you can't be happy all the time, but you can work on the underlying factors that make you happy. And then just understand something like hedonism, that party you go to or that thing, that's cool. We still like hedonism. That's fine, but it will go up. And you know that saying of what must go up must come down. That's where we're talking about joy and hedonism. When we're talking about happiness, we're talking about that underlying state of how you feel about your life.
That's going to get deep today. I because I was saying to my friend earlier, because we literally had such an in-depth conversation about all of this earlier, and I gave her a hug goodbye, and I was like, I'm so dramatic. Like, I'm not unhappy. I just feel a bit lost at the minute, and I feel like maybe that's part of the Sunday scaries. It's why I'm getting bouts of different emotions, and maybe that's partly to do with the pressure we put on ourselves. Is that I must have it all figured out. I must be happy all the time. I must be like going about my day like on this constant high of I know exactly where I'm going, I know exactly what's to come. And the minute you're out of that sync or that limbo just a little bit, it for me it just turns my world upside down.
Yeah, and I think on that, Meg, I think one of the words that we need to pick up is the word ordinary.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the word ordinary and the word in there is ordinance.
Mm-hmm.
So ordinance is obviously related to geography and where you are. So when you don't know where you are, it's natural to feel like, oh, I'm not quite sure if I'm going in the right direction or am I doing the right thing? So I think what we often do is we chase things that we think are exciting. I'm not talking about you, by the way, specifically. I'm just talking about all of us. We chase things that we deem exciting and we often demonize ordinary. We think, oh, ordinary is boring. But ordinary is the part of life that makes us feel grounded and is equally as important as like the exciting fun bit. So everything that you just said there, I don't think that is strange or odd at all. I think that's just our brain and our bodies just trying to recalibrate and understand where we are. And maybe there's a few questions that are unanswered that need to be filled in, which is why when you look into the happiness research, some of the happiest people are 65 years old. And you know, when you meet
Really?
people and they've just worked it all out, that's like true wisdom, isn't it?
Mm.
That maybe they do know actually what makes them happy, and possibly looking at our data, sometimes it's the ordinary stuff that maybe you've taken for granted for years that actually make you happy, rather than the things that you're chasing. Again, I'm not specifically talking about you, Meg. I'm just talking about all
Mm.
of us.
When you go into places of work and you're speaking to people that are saying like, Matt, I've got a blockage, I'm not happy about this, some things. Do you find a lot of it is related to work or do you hear a lot about personal life as well?
Now, it's so connected.
Is it?
And if you're unhappy at home, it impacts
Mm.
your happiness at work. And if you're unhappy at work, it impacts your happiness at home. There's an amazing charity, Meg, called One Plus One. They were set up in, I think, the 70s or 80s. Have been going a long time now, and they specifically research relationships. And they started in the world of researching relationships, specifically marriages at home. But they realized that they couldn't impact home happiness without impacting work happiness. And the flip is also true. And I bring up relationships there because relationships is the number one driver of happiness at work. So, and it's very similar at home as well. So the answer to a lot of this, often we're taught that it's internal. We think like, oh, we need to go inside and find out our path and do what's right for us. But often it's external. Often it is our relationships and how we're connecting with other people that might make us unhappy. If there's any parents listening, as parents, we have a saying, which is you're as happy as your unhappiest child. So that just kind of shows that how connected human beings are. Our happiness isn't like a sole unit on our own. It's connected to all those around us.
What does this work mean to you? Like, why you as a person did you step into working and creating a company around happiness?
So for me, it came from unhappiness, which is not unusual now, but I was 25 when I started my first business. But at the time, there wasn't as that many young people starting businesses. Now, there's so many people like yourself, Meg, that are going, you know what, I'm going to choose my own path. And I think that's a really healthy thing that is more common. But back then, it wasn't. And we were just trying to scale a business and we wanted it to be this global business. But when we started to get to about 50, 60, 70 people, we just kept hitting these like roadblocks of unhappiness. And as data guys, I'm a geek, that's how I describe myself. We wanted to get more data on it. And people that are not geeks and not data, you don't have to switch off now and think, oh, I'm not a data person. I'll just say this great saying that I love, Meg, which is data is the plural of anecdote. So all data is all the stories mashed together and then put into one story and then it's told. But if you're running a business and someone comes to you with one story, then it might just be a one-off. It just could be an anecdote. Once you mush it all together and, for example, you find out, you know what, people don't feel psychologically safe in this organization or people feel discriminated against or whatever, then it goes from being one person's story to being a really powerful piece of data. And then the really cool thing is, Meg, you then have to turn it back into a story anyway, which is why podcasts and things like this exist, because us as human beings, we don't really like data. We like the stories. So it basically starts as stories, becomes data, but then it has to be turned back into a story again.
And was starting the business for you what made you happy again? Was that like, did that fix the issue?
Well, I think I've never been deeply unhappy or deeply happy. For me, searching for happiness in a business context was about performance, which is not what everyone really ever wants to hear. But for me, I was CEO of an organization and I needed that organization to perform.
Mm-hmm.
But what I wanted to know is my personal belief is that if you look after people, the business will perform better. The problem is, and I bet you do too, Meg, and I bet the listeners do too, I know loads of companies where they treat their employees like rubbish, absolute rubbish, but the business seems to do okay. So that really didn't link with me. So for me, I'm always on the discovery of learning. And I just bet the two didn't fit. Like, I believe as a leader that if you treat your employees well, that's good for business. However, I could see loads of companies that are treating their employees really badly, doing really well. So I was like, this doesn't make sense. So for me, setting up the happiness index with some others was to find out, firstly, just is that true or not? And what we found out over time is those companies that treat people really badly but do well, they're performing in spite of, and they would have been even better. So you get an example where they just might have a really good product, or they came out first, or they just really nailed the brand and they start doing well. But actually, if they'd actually had an approach where they really looked after the people, they would have been even better. So they've lost loads of value on the table. So my story of happiness is a really boring, geeky one, which is I just wanted to know, do happier people at work perform better? And now, well beyond our work, it's proven that people happier at work are more creative, they're more productive, and the companies they work for have better financial outcomes. But that wasn't always known. And there's more and more studies coming out of Oxford University and so on that are showing this now. But there was a lack of data back then, and I find that exciting as a geek to find out, right, what is the best approach in terms of looking after your people to actually for your business to perform.
So for you, aside from the work that you're doing out there, obviously it was figuring out where your career is going to go, what you want to do, what's your purpose when it comes to your job, your work, etc. So would you say starting out as an entrepreneur, starting a business really helped check one of those boxes for you? Or do you
Yeah,
think you could have been employed?
I think maybe I talk about this quite a lot, which is I would, in the early days, and even today, I'd prefer to have a job, but I've never really had a job, but I could never find the culture where I could be happy. So I've had to create it for myself. And there are great businesses out there, and we work with them now. They tend to become our customers, but all the things that I really, really wanted, which is we all want, it's all in the data: psychological safety, acknowledgement, freedom, the top three things that make you happy alongside relationships. I couldn't find that in corporate companies, and I even when I got my dream job at a media company, and I left within 3 months because I just couldn't stand the culture. I couldn't be myself. I didn't like it. And it's like, when sort of like people like quit something quickly, people call them like a snowflake, or they say, oh, they're not resilient or whatever. It's like, life's too short. Like if you get in somewhere and it is horrific, and it becomes a privilege with that, because what if you're a single parent who has a child, two children, and you need to pay for them to live, then you might not have that choice. But at that time, I didn't have any responsibility other than myself. And I probably could have if it had gone really bad, I could have slept on someone's sofa, or I could have moved back in with my parents, which is a real amazing privilege that you always have to acknowledge. Some people don't have that choice, but I did. So I had a real low tolerance for BS. I just couldn't handle it. And it just led me to take my own chance as an entrepreneur, which I definitely don't regret. But I always say I'd have loved it if I'd just worked somewhere that just had a really nice culture. I'd still be there today.
It made me think though, when you're talking about, someone listening that's just like, my job's okay. I don't love it. I don't hate it. Life's okay. I'm not really low. I'm not really happy. Like, is that such a bad thing?
I think it's so personal, Meg, and it has to come down to what the person wants. When I wrote my last book and I looked at all our data, the thing on the meaning of life I found is that my definition of it is the meaning of life is finding meaning in life. That's how I see it. But the meaning you find in life can be totally different from person to person. So the meaning in life for someone could be just to be the best friend that's really good at listening to your friends. It could be you've got an ill relative and your meaning in life is to look after them. It could be that you want to get humanity to Mars because you think that we need a plan B. And I don't think either is better or worse. I think you need to find the one that you're comfortable with, because you've got some people who love risk up there. Like I don't like it myself if I'm not taking risks. I'm not on an adventure. So I know that about myself, but I also know that when you take risks in your adventure, things go wrong as well. So I have to accept that by taking risks, when things go wrong, I can't be unhappy with the fact that it's gone wrong. Like when things go wrong, I have to say to myself, well, I'm happy that I made that choice, even though that went wrong, because I would have been unhappy if I hadn't have taken risks or been on an adventure. So I think you need to know what your like tolerance level of what it is. And then this is where I think that's the problem with movies and films and books, is it makes people feel judged. And I was talking to some mums on the school run recently, and mums find that they get judged whatever way they go. So if they decide to focus on their career, people will say to them, well, what about the children? People who just focus on the children get people saying, well, what about your career? And then there's people in the middle that might do a job that's not quite where they would have been if they hadn't had children. So I think society and films and movies and everything make us feel uncomfortable about our choices. But I think the work to be done is to find out find the meaning in life, but then get comfortable with that meaning, and it really doesn't matter what anyone else thinks about that. Meg, have you heard that saying, comparison is the thief of joy?
Mm, yeah.
Like, that's what happens so much. That's why I'm not on social media. I use LinkedIn for work, but I struggle with it. I just look at it and think, like, what is the point of 98% of stuff that's put out there? Quite often someone puts a post up of themselves on holiday and it just makes someone else feel bad that they're not there. It's like,
Mm.
I don't get it. But
I must,
some people get enjoyment out of that. So,
yeah. I must admit, you're probably one of the more rare CEOs I think I've spoken to. I envision now building a business, being a CEO and entrepreneur. You just have to be stressed 24/7, lack of time. You know, the fact that you're saying, like you've told me, you literally have phone bans where you remove your phone, you'll go away, and that's it. You detox and you have that for yourself. I feel like you've kind of nailed that comfy in the middle. I can run a business and be my own boss, but I also, it doesn't have to define my happiness or my purpose.
well, I think in my first business, it wasn't balanced.
Mm.
So, in my first business, we just worked non-stop. And we were out almost every night with clients and prospects. And the first thing that I did, one of the first things that I did when I switched from my first business, which was sold, and it was on the surface really successful, but the amount we put into that, I look at it now and think, was it worth it? But part of my mission in my second one is, how can you run a business that is balanced? Because the happiness index is about that. So I have to practice what I preach. If I run the happiness index and I burn myself out, it's failed. It's like,
Mm.
it's a total failure. So, and like I said, I think I mentioned to you before, Meg, one of the reasons I gave up alcohol is because in my first business, when I was stressed, I used to use alcohol to relax and move away the stress. But what I found is that the stress just came back at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and all alcohol does is just pushes the problem down the line. So if every time you're stressed, this is just me specifically, if every time I was stressed I drank, I just pushed the problems into the middle of the night when my brain would start thinking about them. And then you got another problem, you're not getting sleep. Then if you're not getting sleep, everything feels worse and everything feels harder. And then when my children came along, I just felt like I just want to be brilliant dad, number one, and a brilliant CEO, number two, and everything else, like, can wait. So you do have to make conscious decisions, I think, to get to there. But the one on the turning the phone off, it's funny how scared people are when I tell them about that. And I encourage other people to do it, but 9 times out of 10 people say there's no way that I could ever do that. But without judging, I always think they can. They're just a bit scared. But we all get a bit scared every now and then, Meg.
You've made two huge changes that are very societal norms, isn't it? To have your phone and to drink alcohol. Did it, one thing I'd love to, like from yourself, but through this podcast process as well, is that people see people online, like you say, you compare to someone and I see someone that's on their journey of sobriety and I think I'd like to do that. I'd like to attempt that. I did struggle with the societal norms being in places where most people drink all the time. I found that really difficult when I tried. But I look and I think, oh my gosh, they just make it look easy. I want to uncover like how hard was that? Like if you're talking about giving up alcohol and giving it, did it just happen straight away that you're like, I'm going to do this now and it's easy? Because
No,
surely it's
absolutely
not.
not.
Yeah.
So it started with a lot of people like dry January. So you do dry
Yeah.
January and you think, oh, I feel a lot better. But then you just go back and you go back. And for me, the first time I gave up, I then went on a uni reunion and I saw one of my mates. I've told him about this and this is not his fault. I saw him and I got really excited and we had a drink together. And then I sort of went back to drinking again. So I had to go through the process of giving up and then failing and then realizing I prefer it. Like I just cannot stand that like beer anxiety the next morning. It's horrible. But for me, I wouldn't have been able to do it unless I'd read up on it. Like I had to read up on the neuroscience of drinking. I did my own study where I found out I was unhappier when I drank. I compared it to a happiness low. Yeah, obviously I work in happiness, so that's what my brain's thinking about all the time. But when I wrote my notes up and my data up, what I realized is that happiness like when you drink, it's like borrowing happiness from the future. But then when you pay the loan back, it's like a really high APR. So what I found is it wasn't worth getting that up to get like a double down or whatever it was. So for me, it was really difficult, and I just had so many people around me um, that were really supportive. Like I used to work with someone called Jade, and she didn't drink, so she would like WhatsApp me little tips. And it's funny if I look back now, because I don't even think about it now. It's like not something I think about. But when I look back, like did seem exactly like you said, Meg. It seemed really hard, and I think I'm a bit of a people pleaser as well. So there's that bit to deal with. Like, you go along and someone's really excited about having a drink with you, and then you're not going to be drinking. Like, I think there was that element of it. It was a really good app called Sober, um, and in it has how many days people have been sober. But when I was doing it, I would scroll back to 0 days, and you would see so many people on 0 days going, "Oh bugger, I got to a year, I got to 2 years, I got to 6 months, I got to 3 weeks. I'm absolutely gutted that I've gone back." So I used to have FOMO, like in the early days, but then as time went on, by seeing other people do it, I got there. But the point on you said about events, Meg.
Mm,
If you read the literature, what it will say is it takes 3 or 4 months for alcohol to not be in your system and not be a habit anymore.
right.
But I would say it takes 2 to 3 years for it to not be normal in society for yourself, because you need to go to X amount of weddings, X amount of Christmases, X amount of birthdays where you just say no. And then eventually, when you've done that cycle of 3 years, and I hate calling it a brand, but you are become known as a non-drinker,
Mm,
and then nobody offers. But because it's never a problem with new people, because generally speaking, new people, if you say, "Oh, I don't drink," that's cool.
mm,
But actually, it's the people you've known for years that they and deep down they might be wanting to give up themselves or whatever, but deep down they kind of think that you'll come back to drinking, so they'll try and get you to drink, sometimes for negative reasons, sometimes just for friendly reasons. But I think I always manage expectations to say 3 or 4 months you'll feel so much better, but it is going to take 3, maybe even 4 years for it to become to the point where you just don't even think about it. So I don't think it's easy at all, but it does become easy when you've done it for a long time, in my opinion.
mm. Did your partner drink?
She does drink, but she definitely drinks less now because I don't drink. Um, But interestingly, I think she would like it if I drank every now and then, like on special occasions. But I'm pretty like, no, and by the way, I always say I haven't given up. I'm just not drinking right
Yeah.
now. So I've never said I'm not, because I think once you say you don't want something, let's just pick something universal like chocolate.
Mm,
If me and you decided we weren't going to have chocolate for 2 weeks, you would just, God, we'd be thinking about chocolate all day, wouldn't we?
yeah.
It's one of those
That's a good
things. So
point.
I haven't said I've given up alcohol. I just don't currently drink, but that's extended into many years now.
Yeah. Yeah. I think alcohol's a really, really interesting one because for many years from an adolescent growing up and trying alcohol, you drink because it's fun and it's exciting. But I don't get hangovers, I get anxiety, like you say. I just feel so low. And we know that it's actually a depressant. So it's ironic that in societal norms, it's seen as something that cheers people up to celebrate, to have fun. And I think the pressures of that is what I struggled with. And then I put pressure on myself and it made me more of a recluse than I already am. Like I told you, I'm like a little hermit in my house as it is. And now I
Yeah.
can't go to the pubs or to a restaurant because everyone's drinking around me.
Yeah.
I just, it made me feel lower. And I don't know if that's, like you say, I just think it is really hard. But I think for me, I was pairing that on top of coming off antidepressants and making other lifestyle changes. And I do think that's where we almost set ourselves up for failure, is when we go through a cleanse or I want to sort my mental health out, I want to fix my mind and my well-being, is we fall into this rabbit hole of every piece of advice on online. And you've got the ice baths, you've got journaling, you've got therapy, you quit alcohol. And we do it all at once. And it's an overwhelming thing to try and make huge changes all in one day that are going to stick for a lifetime.
And I
And they
think
are something you have to practice often, you know?
totally agree, Megan. I think all these things like giving up alcohol or ice baths, and I'd include holidays in this as well.
Mm.
They're often a way of getting getting yourself away from what the problem is or what the issue is. So as being someone who's given up alcohol now, although loads of other people have given up alcohol, quite often people realize they've got a serious problem once they've given up alcohol because they were using alcohol to mask something else. So, and the holiday's a good example of that. Like, people go on holiday to get away from their actual life that they live every single day. And even if you've got loads of money, you're probably maximum going to be able to go on like 5-6 weeks of really amazing holidays. But that is still a tiny proportion of your year. So I'm not anti-holidays. I think holidays are brilliant. But if they're always to get away, and it's the same with the weekend thing, it's normal to get scaries. But if people are living primarily just for the weekend, there's a serious issue in 5/7 of the week as well. So sometimes these can be really deep things. Sometimes they can be small things like me, which is drinking to reduce stress. Okay, I need to find out different ways to deal with stress. That's what I've gone on to do. So things like running and stuff like that are healthier versions to deal with stress than alcohol. But what people will find, going back to your point, Meg, is that they'll give something up, but they may actually find something deeper in there as well, because whatever their thing they were using is deeper.
Hmm. So my partner said to me the other day when we were talking about jobs, and he was saying how one of the most significant things about loving your job is that you don't then live for the weekends. You're wishing every day away, and then you live for the weekend where you can, like you say, escape that. Do you think, from the work you've done and your own experiences, that if we're falling out of love with our job, or even, like you say, falling out of love with our relationships, etc., can we fall back in love with those things?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think there's a difference between looking forward to the weekend and being desperate for the weekend. Because again, I love my job, the team, everything I do. I feel so thankful. But I still look forward to the weekend. I put I'm a football coach at the weekends. I look forward to doing stuff and the change. And I still have Sunday evening where I'm getting a bit of the scaries, just like I did last night, just like you did. Um, but I think that's where the data comes in really powerful. So if someone's falling out of love, if we think about falling out of love with their job, let's think about the top 4 things that we've mentioned already. So relationships, acknowledgement, safety, and freedom. So have a look at your job and be asking the questions, does it offer you that? And also, if you're going for a job interview soon, say, look, I've done the research myself. For me, money's important, but also happiness at work is. These things drive happiness. So I would like to know, do you think that I would be able to get those in this organization? And that can become really important, especially if you're picking between 2 jobs, and you find out, but through an interesting conversation. And one thing I would say is, if anyone's scared to have these conversations with someone that's interviewing them or someone in their own work, that also tells you something, because it tells you that you probably don't have the psychological safety to have that conversation. And if you are being interviewed and someone finds that conversation odd or strange, then maybe that's not the right company as well. So just by having the conversation, I think is an important one. So I absolutely think you can fall back in love with work.
Hmm. It's a funny one. Like, I know you've already mentioned how it seems to be ingrained in culture that we're not here to make you happy. We're here to pay your wage so you can pay for your bills and do the things outside of work that make you happy.
Yeah.
And I think it's still very common to say that, it's very rare that people love their jobs and you go to work to earn money and come home and live for the evenings and weekends. And so when we're sitting on a podcast and talking so much about falling in love with your job and having happiness around your work, it still seems like a taboo thing or an odd thing to say, because I think for a lot of people that just have a standard 9 to 5, that's all it's meant to be. Like, should we all be striving to love our day jobs? Like, is that normal?
I think it's normal for human beings to think about their happiness. And often they'll go to the obvious places, like maybe their marriage or their relationship with their parents. But we're at work longer than anything else, like other than sleep. I spend more time with my colleagues than I do with my family. So I just think life's too short. Do the maths, have a look at it, and and ask the right questions. But also, you know what? If you're happy with Monday to Friday, just being a slog and you don't particularly enjoy it, but you want to crack on at the weekends and the evenings, that's absolutely fine as well. But you've got to do the work yourself and ask yourself, are you really happy doing that? But don't let anyone else judge you. Like if you're happy doing um, a job that you may just seem as you're just trying to pass the time, but you're happy doing that, that's okay as well.
I started thinking about my cousin then. He worked majority of his life becoming a plumber and started his own business, and he was doing really well and he really successful, always working, had lots and lots of money. And then one day we're all sat around at my granddad's and we find out that he's stopping the business. He's going to get a degree and become a nurse. And he's worked his way up in healthcare now. And I remember at the time thinking, how could you give up everything you've worked so hard on? You were earning so good money and now you're going to go into healthcare and be starting at the bottom again. And I think that's one of my issues, is that not my happiness, but I think I tie my happiness to a salary or a monetary value. And like you say, you talk about data and stuff, and maybe we need to start tracking the data in a way that it's not just done by numbers on a paycheck. And it's like, how do we do that? How do we change that way of thinking?
Yeah. And I think the first time I heard, there's an amazing TED talk. It's the first time I heard a scientist talk about, and the book's called The Happiness Advantage. And going back to your cousin, the first time I heard him talk about how if you're happier in your work, you perform better in your work, the reverse to what society teaches you, because you're kind of taught, right, go to school, get good qualifications, your qualifications get a good job, your good job gets you promotion, then when you're promoted, you get all these things, and then you become happy. But in that happiness advantage, that was the first time I heard someone say, no, it's the other way around. If you're happier at school, you'll get better grades. If you're happier at work, you'll get better performance at work, and so on and so on. And that as society, we just think of it the wrong way around. And that author is called Sean Aker, and it's a good TED talk to go. And it's a great starting point for anyone interested in this subject. And it flipped it in my mind and sort of led me on my journey to the happiness index, because my company that I set up before was a marketing business. And as a monetary perspective, we were making so much money when we sold that business. And we got paid really well for it. But I would have financially been better off to stay in that business. But I wouldn't have, at that point, I'd been doing the same thing for 10 years. And because I had this like inquisitive mind, I needed to go and do something else. So if I'd picked it from monetary reasons, I wouldn't have probably gone and done all the other things that make me healthier and happier now.
Would you say were you happy as a child?
I'd have to ask my mum.
Because did you grow up on a farm?
Yeah, I did grow up on a farm. And there's interesting study in Germany that children, it's called the German, it's a mental health study, but children who grow up on farms tend to grow up and have stronger mental health. And they believe that it is to do with the exposure to bacteria in soil and animals at a young age that helps shape people's mental health as adults. And the first time I heard this, I thought, this is absolutely crazy. So I actually located one of the people that did the research. And what they found is, if you go for a walk and you just feel if you go for a walk in the woods and you feel a bit better, there's a bacteria in soil that triggers serotonin in your brain in the same way that drugs like Prozac do. So this is not me saying if you're on Prozac you should stop taking Prozac, or just coming out with some kind of like wacky alternative view. This is just the way that our bodies work. So if you go to the Happiness Index podcast, you can scroll down. There's an episode called "Can Soil Make You Happy?" And when I first heard this, I thought, this is absolutely crazy. But going back to the fundamental things that make you happy, I feel that as a child, I had those. And one thing that I definitely did have is when you grow up on a farm, your parents' office is the farm. So I never had to do the thing of waiting for my parents to come home or not seeing them. I had access to my parents 24/7. And I definitely, although I don't live on a farm now or anything like that, I live in London, I try and create as much of that for my kids as I can, like dropping them off at school, picking them up from school when I can, because I do think my parents being around something that everyone gets. And growing up in like all the fresh air and everything, which I've now learned is actually good from a mental health perspective when you're an adult. That's all that stuff blows my mind that is being researched and it's important.
This is where like I'm obsessed with the data. Like, can someone make you happy? That's so interesting. Is there anything else? Any other random things that make you happy?
Oh, there's loads. I think another one that blows people's minds is you tend to be the average happiness of those around you. So this is you can take it two ways, can't you? Let's say you've got your four best friends are all really unhappy. You can take it one way and get rid of those four friends, can you? You go, right, I'm just going to find some happy friends. By the way, I don't think that's the answer. But what I think this is telling us, the most brilliantly selfish thing you can do to make yourself happier is to make those around you that you spend the most amount of time with happier. So it totally doesn't make sense at first, does it? And we also know that if you do like kind things for other people, it makes you happy. So actually, and I also think there's an extreme here. Let's talk about people pleasers like myself, where you do everything for everyone else, and you just become
Yeah.
someone that's used by everyone else. So I'm not advocating for that. But again, one of the problems of happiness is that everyone thinks internally. I think this came out a little bit out of West Coast America psychology, that you can almost just sit there and think yourself happy. The thing that I've learned from this stat, Meg, is that happiness is a team sport. It's not something that can be done on its own. Even though you need to do your own work, those around you will impact you. And I'm not saying go either way and get rid of all your friends or just spend your whole time sorting your friends' lives out. There is probably some kind of mushy bit in the middle where you focus on community and friends and relationships more than you would on the stuff that you buy.
What do you think about the latest news of removing social media for under 16-year-olds in Australia
Yeah.
and how they want to bring it here? Is that
So
something
this is
you're for?
massive.
Yeah.
I'm a girls football coach. I coach
Hmm.
under 12s girls. I also coach under 9 boys, and I I think it's really the way that I look at it, Meg. The research and the thing is, it's me. And I make this personal. I don't know why I make this personal. I think it's me versus Mark Zuckerberg for the well-being of my children, and that
Mm.
is something that I have to win.
Hmm.
Um, I know some of the team that are working on the sort of like smartphone free childhood. But again, my favorite movie is Star Wars, which is Sith Lord. And there's a great saying in Star Wars: only Sith Lords believe in absolutes. Now, I'm not of the view that phones are horrific. I don't think phones are the devil, but I think they have really negative, and the research shows this for children's mental health. So, firstly, I think the responsibility, as every parent listening will know, children don't do as you tell them, they do as they see. Firstly, I know loads of parents are absolutely outraged. Get rid of phones. Phones are the devil. But I'm just going to look for my phone because I'm going to put it away for this. So it's not in here. So I'm going to have to use a rock for my phone. There are parents that say to me that phones are the devil, but then they're constantly talking to you like this and they're on their phone and
Hmm.
they're like, you're having a conversation like me and you are now. And they keep like this. And, and they're just totally, so I agree. We need to manage the time and access to phones. I think social media there's a difference between social media and phones. I think social media absolutely out. Children should not have access to social media. There are reasons from medical through to learning resources that I think smartphones can be useful. However, I think the responsibility has to come from the adults that are not talking to you like this whilst telling you smartphones are really bad.
Mm.
So I take a bit of a rounded view on it, but I think it is the subject of our times, and I hope that something is done whilst my children are still of a young age.
That's huge, actually. This practice what you preach concept almost, isn't it? 'Cause like even like you talk about it with children, but as an adult in the workplace, I've seen people that say to me, you know, my higher authority or my manager don't work on weekends. I don't expect this of you. I don't expect this of you. Yet they're doing all those things, and I'm here thinking, well, if I want to impress you and you think that's okay for you to do, then subconsciously you're testing me. Like, and
Absolutely.
we do think like that. I think it's a huge change that we're bringing in. I think this whole idea of banning social media for under 16-year-olds definitely has its benefits, but I think it's going to come with a lot of backlash. And I think first and foremost, it's your job as a parent as well to enforce those things and to make them okay and comfortable to talk about. And, you know, if I'm sitting here saying I don't think you should be on your phone as a parent, as a mother, but I'm sitting here having that conversation with you whilst I'm scrolling on Facebook without getting too like nitty gritty the politics and stuff. Me and my partner spoke about it quite a lot because it seems to have been a hot topic in our house. We don't have children, so I don't know why, but we both have we're both quite opinionated on it. But people like Mark Zuckerberg have had these warnings for a long time, and nothing's happened. As though someone's got to make a change.
Yeah,
massively.
I think it's the smoking of this generation, as in, like, I think my mum. I think my mum's mum or mum's sister gave her first cigarette. Sounds terrible, but she was definitely under 16. And I think that was, I don't know how common it was. This was in Ireland, so, but I don't think it was unusual for people under 16 to be smoking. And now it's gone the other way, hasn't it? Where it's so antisocial. Like if someone starts smoking, people are like, what is that? Like, what's going on? And I think it just needs to be that point. Like, so I still see people doing it. Like, I'll go in for a meeting and they're checking their phone, and for me, I totally lose respect for that person, and I log it somewhere around whether that person is someone that I want to work with, or if I'm interviewing or whatever. Because I just, as soon as someone's doing it, it's just, you might as well just say to them, you might as well say to the person that you're meeting to that they're not important. That's literally what that's saying. I think it's okay to say, I'm leaving my phone on because I've got a dependent child that I need to be contacted at any point, or to have it in your bag on loud if you need it. But the constant like this all the time. But then there's another conversation around addiction. I think there are people that are addicted as well. So I think there's probably a more sophisticated conversation, just like smoking, around addiction and stuff like that will come out. But I think there's so many parallels to smoking and how dangerous it is, but how covered up it was for so long. I think that we're starting to see these companies have known about this for a long time, and they haven't been very forthcoming in fixing it.
That's a really good comparison, and I think that's a big problem as well, isn't it? Is that we can see the huge negative side effects to smoking. We know that it causes cancer, but if no one's sitting here saying social media causes cancer.
Yeah.
So it's really, and particularly when we talk about mental health, because as we know, like mental health, having anxiety or depression is not like me walking around with a broken arm.
Yeah.
It's invisible illness. And so it's such a hard thing to combat.
Yeah. And stress is one of the predictors of a short life and your mortality rate. So if social media is causing you stress, there's so much to consider in that whole conversation, above and beyond, because the obvious ones are people being able to like Google and find information to end their life early and things like that. They're the ones that get in the press, but there's a whole deeper conversation around what's going on in. And again, I think it has to start with children, because children don't get to choose. Their brains are still forming. They're still very young. When someone's age, I don't know what the age should be, but when someone gets older, they're an adult. Just like I don't think they should make alcohol illegal, even though I don't drink. Well, adults should still have the freedom to choose, but children, as a parent, I know they need help and guidance on these big things.
If someone's listening thinking, I want to know where do I first start then to becoming a happier, healthier person, a better version of myself? Like when you walk into the workplace and you start having conversations with these people, I don't know if that's in groups or one-on-ones, but like, where do we start? What's the initial question of like starting to think about, I want a happier life?
I think it starts with good conversations, Meg. And I think I was talking to someone, we were doing a conference, and she's a happiness, Madeleine is her name. And said when she meets up with her school friends now, they've banned on certain occasions just having the surface level chat, and they get really deep into how they actually are and what's going on in their lives. So I think it's all about deep conversations. Is the start to that, because just take any relationship that you've got that's not great. Anyone listening, yourself, Meg, myself, a relationship that's not quite working. If we just remove all of the extreme examples, because there could be a good example why you don't have a strong relationship with someone that could be abusive, it could be physical, the person could be a psychopath or a sociopath. We're just going to move all of those out, and we're just going to talk about normal relationships that get strained. They can normally be solved by good conversations, and normally people fall out or they have issues because they just couldn't see the other person's perspective. So I think the point is to start getting comfortable with having deep conversations with people. And I think historically, Meg, that's what community does. Like community, yeah, any person who studies research comes back to community and says that's why partly where we lose happiness, where we've become disconnected as communities. So find ways to reconnect. My way to connect is through sport. It's like coaching children, getting to know the parents of those children, makes me part of the local community and more connected, and I feel happier for it. But on the surface, if I looked at it, there's no way I've got time to do coaching. I estimate the other day it takes up 7 hours of my week. I don't have 7 hours of my waking time to give up to do that. But it's definitely one of the best things that I do.
Hmm. I think we forget how much we see life through our own lenses. And one of the things I love to bring up in conversation is we throw around the phrase treat people how you want to be treated. But I really think it's treat people how they want to be treated. And you really
100%.
don't know until you actually ask. I spoke to a guy at a podcast came out the other day about how we decide walking into any relationship what we think that other person's how they see us, how they perceive us. And I remember going through a situation with some friends and just feeling like an outsider or not very much included. And I was making those predictions from my own mind. I hadn't even had the conversation. They've not even said one word to me yet, and I've walked into that room and I've dictated how they feel about me. And we do it all the time. But if I actually had a conversation, opened up, tried to have a deeper conversation rather than just how's work, how's life in general, just the mundane stuff, I'd probably uncover so much more about that person, and the issue doesn't really lie with them, it lies with me.
Yeah. And being honest, it's like saying to someone, oh, I was really anxious about meeting you today.
Mm.
They'd probably go, why? And you
Yeah.
probably go, oh, because you remember, if you're really honest, you say, oh, I remember when you made that remark.
Mm.
And they probably don't even remember making that
Yeah.
remark, or you misheard them, or you took it out of context. We all do it. Jens Nielsen, a guy who used to work with in Denmark, used to say, fear is a prediction of the future. I've always kept that in mind. When I'm scared of something, I think, what am I scared of in the future? And it sometimes just makes me feel a bit better.
Fear is the prediction of the future. I love a good quote, me. Just written that one down. I'm going to round up. Matt, I'm going to ask you, is there anything you want to leave the audience with today? And I always ask, is there like a book, a tool, a piece of advice, something that once they finish listening to our conversation, they have something to look at for themselves and continue thinking about, I suppose, happiness?
I would just channel your internal geek, and next time you feel happy or unhappy or whatever, just tell yourself as a data point, and it's your body trying to tell you something. And don't do what I did, which is in the past, if it was negative, I'd used alcohol to get rid of it. Just lean into it and go, I wonder why I feel like that, and just use it to have a really interesting conversation. This is going to make people laugh. An interesting conversation with yourself, that is okay. It's been demonized for hundreds and hundreds of years that if you talk to yourself, that means you're crazy. I would say that means you're absolutely normal. So next time you have a negative or positive thought, just think to yourself, oh, that's interesting. That's a data point. Let's try and work out why I'm having that. And don't be so hard on yourself is the thing that I would say to everyone.
I really appreciate your time today. I don't know where the time's gone. I can't thank you enough for jumping on, and I'm excited to watch where this year takes you with the happiness index.
And you, Meg, thank you for having me on.